All right. So I thought it would be easier if I just recorded something and explained it to you rather than trying to type it into the comment box. So what we are talking about specifically is carbocation stability. And the big thing that I want you to know about carbocation stability going into this is, of course, this idea that tertiary is more stable than secondary, which is more stable than primary, which is more stable than methyl. So, what I want you to know about, you know, a lot of people don't know why this is happening. And the reason is because if you remember inductive effects from either when you did acidity or maybe if when you did Friedel crafts, if you've done that. But this idea that having more substituents is more stable. Okay. And this is a fact that's going to show up over and over and over again. So, to answer your question about can a carbocation shift occur from anywhere? Yes and no. All right. If you have a compound like this and you're doing some sort of reaction where you're generating that carbocation, maybe you're doing E1, or maybe you're doing SN1, or maybe you're doing something analogous to this, where what you're ending up with is a positive charge here. A carbocation rearrangement or some sort of shift will only happen when we can go up in stability from where we are. Okay, so you can't shift a secondary onto a primary, right? So what I want you to do whenever you see a potential carbocation rearrangement possibility is just look to the left, look to the right, and say, okay, if it moved, would it rearrange? And so right now we're at a secondary carbocation. If it moved to the right, it would be a primary carbocation. And if it moved to the left, this would be a tertiary carbocation, right? And so obviously we know that tertiary is way more stable than secondary. So we know that it's going to rearrange so that way we end up with the positive charge being over here. And now we're at this tertiary carbocation. And what we've done is we've moved a hydrogen. Okay. And now that we're at a tertiary carbocation, we're done. We stop. All right. Because the question that people have all the time is, well, can I go from secondary to secondary? Right. Or can I go from tertiary to tertiary? And the answer to this is that only if it becomes more stable. Okay. This is hands down what carbocation and just stability in general governs. This idea that if it's thermodynamically more stable, it will happen. So if we kind of look at you know the uh, kind of sort of intermediate about what's going up, I just want to show you a little representation of what we can see. And so what I want you to know is that essentially what's happening is that this is reaching out and sort of grabbing this hydrogen in a way that's almost like the hydrogen is going to be straddled between the two sites. All right. And so we could put, big brackets around this. We can put, a double dagger to show that this is just a potential intermediate. And what I want you to know is that what we've done is now we've moved a positive charge kind of in between the two carbons. So we've created this positive zone going on. And so from here, what's going to happen is that this hydrogen can either go back and we just reset where we are, or it can continue to go forward and we end up at what we expect, right? We have our hydrogen movement the way that we wanted, the carbocation rearrangement, and now it's over here, okay? So what I want you to notice about this in terms of, oh, why can't we go from secondary to secondary or tertiary to tertiary is this idea that this intermediate is really unstable. Okay. So we know that we start with the secondary carbocation, which I'm going to label as, you know, secondary C plus, and we're getting to that tertiary carbocation, right? And in the middle is that sort of intermediate. And so what's happening is that we are going up in energy before we are coming down in energy. Okay. And so we have an activation energy going on. And, even though that this, it's wildly more stable going on when it gets to the tertiary, we still have to go through this intermediate unstable step. So what I want you to notice is that when we try to do secondary to secondary, and these would be, comparable, that we still have to go through that unfavorable high in energy intermediate step. Okay. So this is why we don't have secondary really changing into secondary. Okay. Or we don't have tertiary turning into tertiary. So to answer your question about, can it occur from anywhere in the molecule? No. It has to occur on the carbon that's being affected, right? It has to occur right there. I'm going to put a big old star right on it. And it can only really interact with the two adjacent carbons, so one on the left and one on the right. Now, the question is, well, what if it's primary and it's reacting to a secondary and has the potential to do a tertiary? Can that happen? Of course it can, because take a look at what the diagram, the energy diagram would look like. Here we are at the primary. The secondary is going to be way more stable, and the tertiary is going to be even more stable than that, right? So every time we're going up in energy because of that intermediate, but we're dropping down, okay? And so this is going to be a favorable change to go from primary to secondary to tertiary, even though we might be, drifting across a couple of carbons, all right? So the big thing to know is that we change positions because of stability. Okay. And it's this kind of two-handed grab is what it's all about. All right. So if this visual helps you out, then that's what you can kind of think of. And it's the same thing if you're trying to grab a methyl group, or if you're trying to grab a hydrogen, or if you're doing a larger alkyl shift, like you're doing a ring expansion, or you're doing, an ethyl shift, doesn't matter. All right. As long as you are doing that kind of two-handed grab and you're going up in stability or down in energy, uh, then it produces the same effect. Hopefully this was helpful.